It was the best of times, it was the worst of times. In the bustling city of Paris, the poor suffered under harsh conditions. Meanwhile, in London, life continued more peacefully. The two cities were worlds apart, yet their fates were intertwined. This is the tale of two cities and the people who lived in them. Dr. Alexandre Manette was a kind doctor who had been wrongfully imprisoned in the Bastille for 18 years. After his release, he was reunited with his daughter, Lucy, in London. Lucy, a gentle and loving woman, cared deeply for her father. She helped him recover from his traumatic past. They lived a quiet life in London, trying to move on from the horrors of the past. Charles Dickens, a French aristocrat, renounced his title and moved to England to escape the cruelties of the French nobility. He met Lucy Manette and fell in love with her. Charles admired Lucy's strength and compassion. Despite his noble birth, he was a man of integrity and kindness. He sought to make a new life in England, away from his family's dark legacy. Sidney Carton, a lawyer in London, was a man of great talent but had wasted his life on drinking and despair. He looked strikingly similar to Charles Dickens. Carton secretly loved Lucy, though he believed he was unworthy of her. He admired her goodness from afar. His feelings for her inspired him to strive to be a better man. In Paris, the revolution was brewing. The people were angry and desperate for change. The Defarges, a couple who owned a wine shop, were leaders in the revolutionary movement. Madame Defarge, in particular, was filled with a burning desire for revenge against the aristocracy. She knitted a secret registry of those she marked for death. As the revolution intensified, Charles Dickens felt compelled to return to Paris to help an old family servant who was in danger. Despite the risks, he traveled back to the turbulent city. Upon his arrival, he was arrested as an enemy of the people due to his aristocratic heritage. He was imprisoned and faced a grim fate. The revolutionaries showed no mercy to those of noble birth. Back in London, Lucy and Dr. Manette were devastated by the news of Charles's imprisonment. Dr. Manette, once a prisoner himself, decided to use his influence to save Charles. They traveled to Paris, hoping to plead for Charles's life. The city was in chaos, with violence and executions a common sight. Lucy remained hopeful, her love for Charles giving her strength. Dr. Manette's efforts to save Charles initially seemed successful. The people respected him for his suffering in the Bastille. However, Madame Defarge's vendetta against the aristocracy put Charles in even greater danger. She wanted to see him dead, regardless of his renunciation of his title. The situation grew increasingly dire. Sidney Carton, aware of the peril Charles faced, followed Lucy to Paris. He had a plan to save Charles. Driven by his love for Lucy, Carton visited Charles in prison and learned about the charges against him. He knew the only way to save him was through a daring and selfless act. Carton's resolve to redeem his wasted life grew stronger. Carton devised a plan to switch places with Charles. He used his striking resemblance to Charles to gain access to the prison. Carton drugged Charles and had him carried out of the prison while he took his place. Charles was taken to safety, unaware of Carton's sacrifice. The next day, Carton faced the guillotine in Charles's stead. Before his execution, Carton found peace in his decision. He knew he was giving Lucy and her family a future. His final thoughts were of Lucy, whom he loved deeply. "It is a far, far better thing that I do than I have ever done," he reflected. Carton died with a sense of purpose and redemption. Charles and Lucy escaped Paris and returned to London. They were heartbroken by Carton's sacrifice, but eternally grateful. They named their first son Sidney in his honor. Dr. Manette also found solace in the safety of his family. Their lives, forever changed, continued in peace. The revolution in Paris raged on. Many more lives were lost in the pursuit of justice and equality. The Defarges continued their work. but Madame Defarge's vengeful nature led to her downfall. She was killed during a struggle with Miss Pross, Lucy's loyal servant. The revolution eventually brought changes, but at a great cost. In London, Lucy and Charles raised their children with love and care. They often spoke of Sydney Carton's bravery. His memory lived on in their hearts. Dr. Manette found peace in his later years. He cherished the time he spent with his family. Charles continued his work as a teacher. He taught his students about the importance of compassion and justice. Lucy supported him and cared for their home. Their life, though touched by sorrow, was filled with love and hope. They remained grateful for the sacrifices made for their happiness. As their children grew, they learned the story of Sydney Carton. They admired his courage and selflessness. The tale of his sacrifice became a family legend. It inspired them to live with honor and integrity. Sydney's legacy continued to influence future generations. The years passed, and the world changed. The memory of the French Revolution faded, but its impact remained. Charles and Lucy watched their children grow into kind and thoughtful adults. They knew the future was bright. Their love and resilience had seen them through the darkest times. Dr. Manette passed away peacefully, surrounded by his family. He left behind a legacy of strength and survival. His story was a testament to the human spirit's ability to endure. Lucy and Charles honored his memory. They continued to live by the values he taught them. In their old age, Lucy and Charles often reflected on their journey. They marveled at how far they had come. The love and sacrifice of those around them had shaped their lives. They felt blessed and content. Their story was one of triumph over adversity. As their grandchildren played in the garden, Lucy and Charles smiled. They saw the future in their laughter and joy. The tale of two cities had led to this moment of peace. The hardships they faced were now distant memories. Love had triumphed in the end. One evening, Lucy and Charles sat by the fire. They spoke of Sydney Carton and his final moments. "He gave us a second chance," Lucy said softly. Charles nodded. "We owe him everything." They both knew his sacrifice would never be forgotten. Their home in London was filled with warmth and laughter. Friends and family often visited. They shared meals, stories, and memories. Lucy and Charles were surrounded by love. It was the life they had always dreamed of. Lucy's children grew up hearing about their grandparents' adventures. They admired the strength and bravery shown by their family. They were proud of their heritage. Each generation carried forward the lessons learned. The spirit of resilience and love remained strong. Charles often wrote letters to friends in Paris. He kept in touch with those who had helped during the revolution. The bond between the two cities remained. Despite the distance, their experiences had linked them forever. The tale of two cities was a shared history. Lucy and Charles visited Paris occasionally. They walked the streets where so much had happened. The city had changed, but memories lingered. They paid respects to those who had suffered. It was a reminder of how far they had come. As they aged, Lucy and Charles found peace in their quiet life. They read books, tended to their garden, and enjoyed their family. Their home was a place of comfort and love. They cherished each moment. It was a life well lived. One day, Lucy found an old letter from Sydney Carton. It was a reminder of his final words. "It is a far, far better rest that I go to than I have ever known." She felt a deep sense of gratitude. His sacrifice had given them all a future. Lucy and Charles shared stories of their past with their grandchildren. They spoke of courage, love, and sacrifice. The children listened with wide eyes. They were inspired by the tales of bravery. It was a legacy that would live on. As their time grew short, Lucy and Charles found solace in each other. They had lived a life filled with love and purpose. They knew they had made a difference. Their story was one of hope. They were ready to face the future together. In their final days, Lucy and Charles reflected on their journey. They had faced unimaginable challenges and had emerged stronger. Their love had endured through it all. As they held hands, they knew their story would live on. The Tale of Two Cities had a happy ending. Please subscribe to the channel for fun and learning.